All right. Cool.
All right.
How's it going? Oh,
Good.
the camera. Hang on a second. Let me switch that real quick.
Hmm.
That's also, there we go. That's the
Yeah.
usual
Okay.
perspective right there. All right, cool. So I think so first of all, hi, I'm Mike, and you are Nuno.
Yeah. Exactly.
Nice. And thanks for signing up. It's like the first time that somebody on the channel decided to volunteer and
Really?
let me ask some questions. I think it's really cool.
Okay.
Um, And now I'm trying to find my notes actually at the moment right here. Yeah. So I think one thing. So you said we could talk about a few topics, right? I'm going to
Mm-hmm.
summarize real quick what we might get into. Um, One is about your experience with your company being like you worked for a company and they were kind of bought out or taken over by Russia in some way. I'm actually always interested. I think another question I think I'm going to ask anybody or everybody is like, what your first reaction was when the actual invasion started,
Hmm.
and what sort of NAFO support you've given or in what way you've participated at all.
Mm-hmm.
You mentioned you also were kind of interested overall in transatlantic politics and sort of what led
Yeah.
to the war. And so I'd like to get your
Yeah.
perspective on that. I think it's always interesting. And one thing I was going to ask you then to get your take on is like what canon needs to be done in Europe in your perspective.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And
Okay.
because it's now like 8 o'clock here and the results of the German election are more or less in, I think we can chit chat about that a little bit at some point
Yeah.
as well.
Okay. Yeah.
Yeah, cool. So, yeah, tell me a little bit about your company.
So I'm from the telecommunications area, from IT. I was working in that area at the time. Now I'm no longer working in that area. And I was working in a Portuguese company that sold the set-top boxes. So the set-top boxes, those boxes that you have to see television, that you have in all homes or almost all homes, not all, but we sold those type of things. We have some operators as customers, and the set-top boxes they have a chipset. That chipset is a low level chipset, fairly low level, but probably is good enough to run on drones and on missiles and avionic stuff. It's probably
Hmm.
useful to do that. So the company was not in good shape anymore because the business was it was getting worse. We have got a lot of competition from Chinese companies, chipset manufacturers also from China. Um, so the chipset providers were being bankrupt, and our company was buying the ships from those companies. So we bought companies and got the ships, or we bought the ships and got them as inventory in
Hmm.
Taiwan, because we had
Hmm.
a part of our business was in Taiwan, because that's where we produce the ships.
Hmm.
And but the company was not giving money. So and the company was included in the bigger consulting company here in Portugal. So at a given time, they separated the company, created a company just with that set-top box business, and they told to the people, look, you are going. This was 2013, October.
Hmm. Hmm.
In October, we signed the contract to move to the new company, which we knew would be purchased by a Russian company. It was actually
Hmm.
not a Russian company. It was a French company nominally. That was actually she was listed in the stock exchange. It does not exist anymore.
Hmm.
And but the owner, the majority of that company was owned by a Russian guy, a Russian oligarch, in the area of satellite television. So I think he has all the satellite television, or at least a very big part of the satellite television in Russia, or he had at the time. So then, and I had some people, look, you are going to work for a Russian company. Well, look, Merkel and Macron, speak with them. This is probably the way to engage with them too. So yeah, what's the point? But some people really did not like and remarked me
Yeah.
about that. But I said, look, I mean, I don't like the guys, but let's see. I was curious also, see what was going to unfold.
Yeah.
So they bought the company, and immediately we received the project to deliver, paid ahead 1 million euros to deliver 150,000 box to an operator in an African country. But the operator did not exist. The operator did
Yeah.
not exist, and the brokers of the business were Indians.
I see. Okay.
We went to Africa to that operator, me and two other guys, to see the conditions.
Yeah.
We developed the project. I got death threats because the project was delayed.
Yeah.
So when the
Yeah.
Indian guy threatened me to that I would be killed, and he was telling me it was already a Russian company at the time. So the business fall immediately after we were purchased by the Russians. And he
Wait,
said, these people,
so
yes,
you got bought by a Russian company. Then
yeah,
you were suddenly asked to deliver a large quantity of these set-top boxes to a country where there was no operator that would actually provide the cable service they were nominally meant for, and you received death threats if you weren't able to deliver them quickly enough. Is that what am I following this correctly?
yes, that's correct. In the meantime,
Okay.
that's exactly correct. In the meantime, Russia had invaded Ukraine in the 2014, so the first
Oh, so you think
invasion
they
of
just bought
Crimea.
it? So you think they just bought it for the chips? Like you think that they bought the
Yeah,
company so that they could basically force you to hand over the
yes,
inventory?
yes. Not forced, because they did not need to force it, because they
Yeah.
were the owners of the inventory.
Yeah.
So, and so we have chipsets, but these chipsets that we were using to deliver to the African country, to an operator that was not existing yet and never
Mhm.
came to exist. So that
Yeah.
operator never came to exist.
Surprise.
Surprise, surprise. So when I was in that country, so the location of the operator was just a big construction site. So they were saying that they were construction scenes filled with Indian people.
Yeah.
And we were always guarded. We could not
Wow.
put our nose outside the compounds.
Mm.
And then we delivered the boxes. So I got the death threats, and he was saying, the people that is behind this, they don't have any problems doing it. Well, who are the guys that have less problem doing it?
It sounds like you're almost lucky you didn't have to scam people into buying cryptocurrency while you were there. I mean, it sounds really shady.
Yeah, it was a bit shady, but at the time I really did not find it so shady, because this business, if you work in the developing countries, and we were working with developing countries in South America, in
Yeah.
Indonesia, you have shady stuff normally, even if you are delivering normal stuff.
Yeah.
So at the time, I really did not think that much that this was not going to do to be a real product. But it never came to be a real product. We delivered 150,000 boxes to that country, and the operator never existed. So they purchased 150,000 boxes and never came up into being. And that was not the only one, because we had this, because these processors, they did not belong to our inventory. We bought them. We bought them because these were different processors from a company that was still operating. They are not operating now anymore, but they were still operating, the provider. And then they got all the inventory, so they sold all the inventory that they had, and there were several million euros in processors, in chipsets that were in the inventory, as far as I know. I did not participate in that part. That part was with the CEO and the managing director. I was just a project manager, but people talked, and everybody knew that was the main asset of the company, was those chipsets.
Yeah.
Okay. And then I had also a funny project in Spain, to produce boxes to Spain to the terrestrial service, where they wanted to produce them in Russia. So they produced them in Kaliningrad. And they were to be transported by truck through this already after the invasion of Ukraine. Actually, at the time at the invasion of Ukraine, we were working with some guys, some Dutch guys that were establishing their company in Kharkiv. And then when the Russians invaded, they had to get out of there, and they closed the company, and they closed this was an American company, and they closed the business, and I never heard of them anymore. So they simply were thrown out from there.
Wait, so the second contract happened after the invasion? This deal with supposedly shipping stuff to Spain? Is that what you're saying?
That was already after the invasion, and actually the other one was already after, because the invasion occurred just when we started operations. When the invasion occurred, I was like, shit. Now that these guys are doing this, I want to get out. But it was not easy to get out. It was not easy to get out.
So you did get out, right? When did you get out?
When the company closed.
And when did the company close? And was it due to sanctions or
2016? No. They simply got the company was not profitable. They got rid they got rid of all the inventory of ships, and then they closed the company.
Oh, okay. So they didn't want to make money. They just wanted chips. They did this between 2014 and 2016, probably. Yeah. Okay. And they didn't really care about the future of the company after that.
No. Wow. There was not even a website. The company never had even a website.
Wow. Yeah. That's interesting. I mean, maybe to some extent, if they were legitimately like business to business, that a website isn't always required. But nowadays, I think you can't really do without. It's pretty suspicious for sure. Yeah. The story is pretty suspicious. So you think that the Russians were already planning on building up their sort of inventory? Good, but that's a little bit surprising, because when I looked at, I was actually, for myself at least, graphing the rate at which Russia was using missiles. When they did the first round of like serious missile attacks against Ukraine, it was the summer 2022 going into 2023. That was when they tried to really take out the Ukrainian infrastructure. And I could tell, excuse me, and you could tell that they ran out. Like they basically actually ran out of missiles after their first sort of serious phase of trying to take out Ukrainian infra. I will actually, when I put this up, I'll probably edit in the graph. I still have it. Now you can tell that they then basically had a longer pause, and then they started obviously producing more missiles and more drones and stuff themselves. So it's possible that what you're saying is accurate. It's definitely possible that they were building missiles. I have no idea how many of these chips are necessary for a guided missile or for other, equipment that they have. But they don't. I mean, it looked to me like they never really planned for how hard the war in Ukraine was going to be for them, right? They did try, but they didn't really come close.
Wait. This was in 2014, 2016.
Yeah.
So they got sanctioned immediately at that time. So I think that when they purchased the company was to avoid the sanctions after the first invasion, not the second one.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah, I was just wondering, like, how much would they have built between those two invasions, right? Like, how many guided missiles, other kind of like smart weapons would they have had by the time they started the like main invasion in 2022? Hard to say. It's really hard to say. But I mean, you could tell, right? There was like a lot of video of them like hauling off dishwashers and other stuff like that. It has like cheap.
Exactly. They could be used in everything. They simply need those chips to everything, not necessary for military stuff.
Yeah. That's true. Communications too, radios and stuff like that, right? I mean, that's true. So what was your reaction in 2022? Like, did you think Russia was actually going to invade? And
yes, and I'm going to tell you why. So there are some other shoddy stories in that company. Two other shoddy stories in that company, but let's jump them. What happened is that in 2016, when I left the company, I did not left the company. When the company closed, I decided, while I was still looking for a job, to do a post-graduation with the Portuguese intelligence services, because there's a university in Portugal that does a post-graduation that is given by the Portuguese intelligence services about intelligence and security. And I decided to do that because anybody can apply to it. You are vetted, they do some vetting process, but then you are accepted or not. And you have their guys, Brazilian guys that belong to the army, You have guys from Angola that belong to whatever. And you have people that post-graduation is mostly for the Portuguese security people to get a post-graduation study, but it's given in a university and it's accessible to anybody. So I decided to join and they accepted me. And during the post-graduation, I spoke with them. Some of them, the teachers were from the intelligence services, the students, I don't know. Some were from the armed forces, or others from the police, others from the intelligence services. I guess. And I discussed with them all those things, and I learned a lot of things. And from there, I got the habit of going to the Portuguese Euronews channel in Portuguese and go to the comments and see the comments. This was since 2016. At the time, I was also working. I started working in a Portuguese company from defense that belongs to Thales, to the French Thales. But I was not working in defense. I was working in air traffic management. Then in these Euronews channels, I was like very participative because there were a lot of Brazilians there, a lot of evangelicals, Brazilians that were doing a lot of propaganda against Europe, against France. France was a special target of these guys, supposedly evangelicals and supposedly, and I got to see the patterns of trolls. Some of them were Russian, because they did not even disguise the fact that they had a Siberian tiger in their YouTube logo. Some of them could be Brazilians, but there are a lot of Russians that know Portuguese.
So why is there such a strong connection between Brazil and Russia? I mean, you see this now too. Brazil, even Lula da Silva, who's a little bit more Western oriented almost. I mean, normally, is very, very pretty much pro-Russian, right?
And Bolsonaro probably, yes. I mean, yes, Brazil, there's a lot of reasons for that. I mean, South America is not reliable. And Brazil is not reliable.
It's not like the West has always been nice to South America either, to be fair, right? And they were on the verge. I mean, they had communist countries, and Venezuela still, so they had relationships to communist Russia at the very least.
But they are not nice to each other. Look, a country where the people, normal people, I had a lot of Brazilian colleagues in the IT, because there's a lot of Brazilians in Portugal in IT. And when intelligent, bright people tell me, look, Pfizer is destroying Brazil with pesticides that are not good. Look, I'm sorry, but who is the ruler of Brazil? Aren't Brazilians? The Brazilian government? Why does Pfizer does not break the law in the West, but it does break the law in Brazil? It's not a problem from Pfizer. They always blame the West.
That's true. Do they also have issues with things like Monsanto? I know Monsanto took a lot of shit.
Sure. Because, for example, now, and they are a supplier of China, of raw materials. We could speak about the raw material stuff, because it's something that is really behind all what is happening here. Even
I think so too.
Even the approximation between the United States and Russia. And let me tell you, the target of Russia is China.
Ah, interesting. You mean in a negative way, or in a constructive way? You think they're trying to partner with China, or you think they're actually also trying to compete with China?
No, they are not competitors, because Russia is a provider of raw materials and China is a provider of work. So you have 3 providers of raw materials. United States, you have 5, because you have also Brazil, Canada, and Australia. But you have providers of raw materials are Russia, Canada, United States, Brazil, and Australia, the big ones. Then you have medium ones like Argentina, and Angola, and Ukraine. Then you have the providers of work. I would call also those providers of raw materials providers of capital.
Sure.
They are the guys that have the capital. And then you have the countries that have the work: Europe, China, and India. We don't have raw materials. You have lots of people, and we have to work in order to have an economy. And you have to buy the raw materials to those countries.
Yeah. I had that as a bit of a theory that to some extent it looked like Russia might be trying to improve its relationship with China, or at least have more to offer China. No, you don't think so?
They don't. I don't think they work in that type of mindset. These
That's
guys.
just too constructive.
Yeah, exactly. It's too constructive. I think, and I studied Russia in that post graduation. One of of our studies was in prospective was Russia. We made some studies about Russia, and one thing that they told us there was that the hydrocarbons in the western Russia were going down, whilst the ones in the East Russia were still to be used. Which means that, especially if you think about gas, and considering that part of those reserves are in the Arctic, Europe became a less interesting customer.
Yeah,
and China,
it's more expensive to get the fuel all the way to Europe if you can get it to China.
It's more natural to do it to China. And if you had a normal guy, or if the Russians were normal guys, probably they cannot even fulfill the contracts that they have with Europe.
Yeah.
If they were normal guys, they would handle this in a normal way. But they are Russians. So that's what we do: we invade, we attack there, so that we don't have to sell them hydrocarbons. But the problem is that they are afraid of China.
Yeah. I think they are. I mean, that's reasonable.
That's one thing that we studied in that thing, that the guy, one of the guys, it was one of the considered one of the best ones that we have in intelligence services. He said, "Oh yeah, the Chinese can if they want, they can go to do a picnic in Siberia. They get their picnic bags and they go to Siberia to do the picnic, and then Siberia is no longer Russia." So I think Putin knows this, and they know, and they are afraid of this, and they fear China as much as the United States fear them.
Yeah, there was a rumor that somewhere, I mean, sometimes these things are harmless mistakes, sometimes, right? But there was a rumor I read somewhere that some Chinese textbook maps, some very small sliver of like Eastern Russia was already taken as part of China in like the last couple of years.
They have, because they have some land claims on Russian territory, China, and they actually run a pretty tough war in one island of the Amur River. So the Amur River is the border between Russia and China, and they really run a very tough war there in that island, like 50 years ago, when they were both communists.
Wow.
So, and you can try to read about that, because it's amazing what happened. But but I'm diverging you a little bit. So
let's get back to why you were seeing messages online. Some of them were obviously from Russians, and you said that this was part of what convinced you that Russia would end up attacking. So can you explain that connection?
Because I was engaging those guys, accusing them of being trolls and Russians and traitors. I knew that what I was doing was crazy, but I intended to do that, because everybody is afraid of being crazy in the comments unless you are a troll. So I was trolling them, and I could be very fast. I could be very fast trolling them, and they knew me, and I knew some of them.
Okay.
In the sense that I knew them, and I saw they were there permanently. And there is one day in around September, October 2021, that one guy tells me, there were already the murmurs of the Americans were already saying that Russia was about to invade Ukraine, and that was the discussion. And one guy tells me, he already decided that he's going to in.
Okay.
Of course, I did not take it serious.
So when was that? What year was that?
September, October 2021. So 5 months before.
Yeah,
exactly when the Americans knew that the invasion was going to happen, and that probably there had been already a decision by Putin, and around there, and I got this in Portuguese, and at the time I did not take it seriously, of course, but I did not forget it. So when the invasion happened, I thought, come on, was that guy just throwing things around? But I got convinced, even though I did not take the message on itself very seriously, because it can be anything. It can be a guy as crazy as me that is just saying anything in the internet, like
Sure.
I am. But on the other end, I thought, I don't know. I don't know.
Okay.
And
Yeah.
I did not know the guy. I mean, it could be, I don't know. You don't
I
never
mean,
know
I
the
work
other
with
side.
some. I mean, I also like have some Russian colleagues, and there are definitely some like I knew some that gave up their Russian citizenship like already in like 2018, 2019, and they said, these guys are going crazy. Like they just wanted out of whatever was going on in Russia. They already saw it as heading in a very unhealthy direction. Becoming much more nationalistic, becoming much more
Yeah.
dangerous to speak your mind, cracking down on freedoms, and just generally apparently sort of escalating this like anti-NATO, anti-West rhetoric again inside of the country to some
Yeah,
extent. I mean, he saw that very unhealthy.
but I see that as an end of the deception. So when they lost the Cold War, they entered in a deception period. So I think Putin is, as a broad plan, always had a broad plan, and this is his broad plan, and he is executing them. I mean, what he said in the conference of Munich in 2008, I think, the invasion of Georgia, all this was a deception plan. They wanted to make the economy stronger. They prepared all their measures were directed to make the economy stronger to fight a war, not to improve the quality of living of the people. And that was something that the people from the intelligence services also told me, that they never thought that, or if they thought, they did not tell.
Yeah.
That,
So the Western notion that you can get closer to a country like Russia in a constructive way by increasing trade and giving them a bigger role just turned out to be completely wrong here, right? Like they used every
yes,
bit of money that they got to basically just prepare themselves for a larger attack.
yeah, exactly. Yes.
That's terrible. So was there anything else you wanted to mention about like transatlantic politics, or was that more or less your summary just now?
No, this is the summary. I think that this was he invaded Ukraine. He always had a best plan and a worst plan. And I think his worst plan is the one that he's executing, would be at least Trump will win the elections and he will bail us out. And that was what he was trying. I mean, if he had done it in 3 days, it would have been in 3 days. But then if it was not in 3 days, he would get some other way, and he was not going to back down.
I mean, now in a way, we're in a pretty bad situation again, right? I mean, Trump did get into power. It's becoming very clear very quickly that he's completely serious about more or less abandoning Ukraine or just pushing maybe even Europe into a situation where he forces it collectively to abandon Ukraine. I mean, it's one thing to say, oh, Trump just says a ton of stuff, which is just the worst excuse you could possibly make, as far as I'm concerned, for a president. Saying
you had a guy in Germany that also said a lot of stuff.
Which one?
The one with the mustache.
Oh yeah, that's right. He just said a lot of stuff. You don't know what he's gonna do. He talks all kinds of crazy. Yeah. But I mean, think of it like the way I think about it is, he's added, all Trump has done is added pressure, massive pressure onto Western countries, while actually, pushing the entire rest of the West into a situation where they would effectively make concessions, which looks like it's all basically meant to benefit Russia, right? Like you put so much stress on the West that you say, well, even if you are going to increase your defense spending to 5%, you're going to have to worry about whether the US attacks Greenland. So you might want to think twice about, using it to support Ukraine more, right? Like that's basically the situation that he's created.
Yeah, the problem is this. When I have the post-graduation, we talk a lot about geopolitics. Geopolitics talks about those restrictions that countries have to their development. So let's take, for example, Germany. Germany is a very good example. Germany needs cheap raw materials to make his industry work.
Yes.
And those raw materials are in Russia.
Yeah, or Ukraine. I mean, Germany was signing agreements with Ukraine. That was always, to me, a weird coincidence, right? They signed an agreement with Ukraine in July 2021 that they would do a large-scale mining operation, probably in the Donbas region, which is where most of the rare earths material were, because they had decided that it was strategically important that the West had its own way to produce chips independently of effectively Asia, right? And then I think that in my mind, that is when Russia also seriously ramped up its plans, and basically to prevent that, which is where I saw this kind of potential that maybe Russia thought this was a way to get closer to China, to say, we're going to prevent this alliance between Europe and Ukraine. We're going to make those materials unattainable, and if possible, we might actually like have something to sell to China instead, or
I,
sell
I
it to Europe. I mean, at a high price.
yeah, I think considering the geographical location, I would say
Yeah.
that they want to either be able to sell them to Europe or interdict Europeans from using them.
Yeah, absolutely.
So
So what was your reaction? So when Russia actually invaded, like what went through your head? Like what did you?
Yeah, basically this above people that work in geopolitics says that geopolitics is the top of everything. I mean, and then there is the geopolitical chains of thought. You have the realism, you have liberalism, and then you have the critical theory. So these are the three international relations theories in geopolitics. And they say that realism is quite pragmatic, and they say that liberalism is the ideologically democratic. I would say that critical theory is Marxist, liberalism is democratic, and realism is fascist.
Mm-hmm.
And what I would say is that ideology is always above geopolitics. And again, I give you the example of Germany. What is geopolitical position of Germany? Germany needs raw materials from Russia and Ukraine to make his industry work. Now, a fascist Germany invades Russia and Ukraine and takes those materials by force. A democratic Germany trades with Russia, hoping that this relation of dependency stays. So in order to anticipate what people are going to do, you need to see what is their ideology. And Trump is a fascist.
Yeah, Trump is a fascist. You can tell that, right? It's like I'm just going to take whatever I want to take or whatever I feel I need. Yeah,
it's worse than that. He wants to destroy democracy in Europe.
Yeah.
Why? By the same reason of Putin. They cannot be dictators and then have democracies where people live better than in their countries.
And that is in the end what it comes down to, right? I think that the one thing we've seen over and over in the 20th century is that actually democracy and free markets with okay regulation really do best at providing a good standard of living for people and ultimately providing the best circumstances. And it's dangerous to have that example around you. If you're trying to convince your people that ultimately you're still doing the best thing for them. It's in their best interest, whatever you're trying to accomplish. Yeah. Yes. Cool. I would say, what do you think needs to happen in Europe now? That would be our last question. We've got about 5 minutes before this shuts down because I don't pay for Zoom.
Okay. We need to arm to the teeth. We need to have a nuclear deterrence common to all of Europe. Russia is fairly easy to destroy. I mean, if you take Leningrad and Moscow,
it's got 2 or 3 major cities you have to hit ultimately. You don't need 1,000 nukes.
It was the Russians that told me. It was my Russian colleagues in the company that told me that. Look, Russia, there are 2 Russias: Leningrad and St. Petersburg and Moscow, and then the rest.
Yeah.
And the way that they told me this is like the only thing that matters is St. Petersburg and Moscow. The rest, the country will vanish without them. But we need to have a credible nuclear deterrence force, and we need to make the Russians think that if they put 1 foot in Estonia, they will be bombarded. We need to make them think that this will happen.
Yeah, we have to show them that we're more serious, or that we're as serious about this as they are.
Yes. Yes. This is like two planes that going in front against another and see who is going to.
Yeah, I mean, I completely agree. I think that I think that right now there's some political theater, or there has been some political theater around whether Europe can really spend enough money and whether Europe can really arm up. But I actually think, especially now that the German election is settled, it didn't go. I mean, obviously it could be better, right? You have AfD and you have Die Linke, that are going to be in government, and Die Linke may not be pro-Russia per se, but their plan is not particularly good and still works out against Ukraine and against, actually defending Europe. Like, they basically still want to break up NATO, and they still want to basically stop sending weapons to Ukraine, but they say they're not pro-Russia, and their plan is like asking China politely to convince Russia to stop invading Ukraine. It's really
there's a lot of people like the link here in Portugal that we have two communist parties, actually two, not one but two, one with Stalinists and another with Trotskyists. And a lot of people that go to that, like in Latin America, they are not Democrats. And let me tell you what I tell about those guys. I call those guys the red carpet. The red carpet where Putin goes, because he does it in Russia. Who is the only party that is allowed to do?
I mean, it's scary.
The political system in Russia is the communists.
It's the scary thing in Germany is that they've got both sides, right? So they're basically attacking the center from both sides, and they've split it up into three parties to just eat away at the sort of conventional or pro-European standard party system from as many angles as possible, right? So I think all that considered, I think the election went okay, right? I mean, we have what I was worried about towards the end, what I was getting really worried about is that we would see the kind of polling errors that we'd seen in the US in the last few elections, just because of so much media and internet manipulation, and then maybe people not answering polls or lying, like they'd done at a massive scale. And it turns out the polls were fairly accurate, right? As far as we can tell, it's going more or less the direction that, more or less like it predicted, which means you're going to have a centrist coalition and it's going to be in charge and it's going to make decisions. And now, and it doesn't have to hold back much for the next 4 years, right? So what I hope for, what I expect, I'm just going to say the standard I'm looking for now for the next 4 years is that they basically don't pull any punches, right? That they admit and accept that they have to push hard now to arm up in Europe, to take over the support of Ukraine from the US if they have to, because basically, I mean, the US is far away, and frankly, the US can talk to Russia about whatever it wants to talk to Russia about. But in the end, it's up to Ukrainians if they're going to stop shooting. And it's up to Europe if we're going to help the Ukrainians keep shooting as long as they have to, right?
And for the Russians, they went there only for the picture. The Russians were there for the picture. Look, we are speaking with the Americans. See people.
The Russians also don't actually care about peace. I mean, I think that they absolutely would and will keep attacking other European countries if they're successful in Ukraine. I think that's very clear. All right, man. Really appreciate you talking to me and telling your story. I think it's really cool. I think I already know what I'm going to call this episode, as it were. I think we're gonna talk about, I'm gonna frame a lot of it around how Russia gets its chips, because I think you had some really good insights there from early on. I think it's really cool that you had the experience. Thanks for your time, and thanks for being on the channel. Thanks for following the channel. Feel free to comment anytime. I try to be responsive, and I even got a new microphone now, so that hopefully the audio quality is better going forward. So
it'll be better. Okay.
Awesome.
Okay.
Thanks a lot, man.
Thank you.
Bye.
Thank you. Bye.